Good evening and a very warm welcome to our regular Friday talk from Leicester and Harrow. This evening we are doubly blessed because we have two very special, very experienced Raj Yoga students and practitioners, each with over 40 years of experience, and they are sharing with us this evening on the topic of how to make your love real. So many men over the years that I have seen or heard of shy away from the subject of love. So I think we're in for a treat this evening to have Mr. Neville Hodgkinson and Yogesh Sharda talking to us and talking to each other about how to make your love real. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope you are. Any questions you have for them, if you put them in the chat, and we'll ask them later. Thank you all, and over to you, Neville first, and Yogesh. Thank you.
Good evening. Hello, everyone. And thanks for those introductory comments, Carolyn. Yeah, this is a great topic, and it's true that actually men quite often shy away from talking about love, even though I'm quite sure that all of us want love, and we feel at our happiest and best when we're able to give love in a genuine way. But as the flyer said, what does real love really mean? So that's something that we're going to be looking at tonight. And I'm delighted that Yogesh is joining us. I've known him for many, many years, and he's actually his name means Lord of Yoga, and he's a genuine yogi. I'm a journalist by background, busy newsrooms, family, children, grandchildren. I've got a host of things in my life, and I've found great benefit from practicing Raj Yoga to be able to do all of these things in a positive spirit. But Yogesh is a real yoga teacher and a lord of yoga, of going right into beautiful, sweet depths of awareness, of a pure consciousness. So it's great that he's with us, and we're going to have a bit of fun because we quite often, I enjoy teasing Yogesh. He's always struck me, whereas I've sort of seen my defects very clearly, Yogesh has always struck me as perfect ever since I've known him. And he's so perfect that when I say to him, "You're perfect," it doesn't faze him. If someone said that to me, I'd be acutely embarrassed. But he is so beyond that he doesn't mind my telling him he's perfect. At least he doesn't give me the impression that he does. So that's the kind of relationship we have, and I think you'll enjoy very much meeting him, those of you who haven't met him before. But yeah, it's a great topic really, because it's about life. Life, I think all creatures love to love, or mammals anyway. Maybe crocodiles and alligators don't. They seem a bit cold-hearted. They'll even eat their young if necessary, but mammals they love to love. Do you remember, if you've never seen the story of Christian the lion, you really should. There's a wonderful video on YouTube. If you Google Christian the lion, you'll find it. It was back in the 60s, and these young guys living on the King's Road in London, at that time, you could buy anything from Harrods. Harrods had this boast that they would get anything. An elephant, a tiger, whatever. And they bought a lion cub from Harrods, and they brought him up in their flat in the King's Road. And of course, it was great fun taking him out for walks and things, and all the onlookers being amazed. But he eventually grew into a full-size lion. And so he couldn't stay on the King's Road any longer. And they shipped him out to a game park in Kenya, I think it was, where he could lead a normal lion's life. And he was released there, and he managed, it's quite surprising in a way, having been brought up on the King's Road, but he managed to adjust to it. And a year later, the video shows these two guys going out. They're out there in the game park, and you see the camera focuses on Christian the lion from a distance, but it's seen this little group of people, and it's crawling, like a big cat ready to pounce. What on earth is this? It's got all the lion's behavior, and it's gradually coming towards them, like just in that cat-like way, huge rippling muscles, and suddenly breaks into an enormous run and races up to them and leaps up on them and licking their faces. It's amazing. It's so moving. So lions, along with humans, love to love as well. And it's sad that in our world, so often there are obstacles to our loving. Things happen to us, that cause us to put barriers around our heart. So we find it hard to receive love, and we find it hard to give love sometimes. So we're looking at this topic with that in mind, of how to make your love real. So I'd like to bring Yogesh in at this point. Yo, what are your initial thoughts on this? And would you like a lion jumping up on you and licking your face?
Thank you, Neville, and thank you, Carolyn. I think the first thing I'd like to say is whatever Neville said about me, don't believe a word. He's a great friend. He has a great tease, but also has encouraged me in so many ways over the years. So I have a lot of love for him as a friend and as a human being. So thank you, Neville, for being who you are. Yeah, I really don't know what's going to happen tonight, but let's play along. But yeah, when I was asked yesterday to join in this topic, I also feel that the greatest need of humanity today is to experience real love. And by that, I mean real spiritual love. And I think that it's like a multivitamin tablet, real spiritual love. It contains everything that a person needs. And love is like a kind of umbrella term or a compound term, which includes respect, kindness, feeling valued, feeling appreciated, all of that. And when the human heart is filled with this genuine spiritual love, then our thinking changes, the way we see life changes, the way we relate to each other changes. And I think a lot of today's problems in the world, a lot of the violence, a lot of the discord, is a result of the lack of love. And, love is also probably the most misunderstood word in the world today. It's taken on many, many different forms. So to explore its true meaning, I think is very good, very essential for all people. And if I may say, I think it really starts with looking at one's own relationship with one's own self. Do I have real, genuine love for my own self? Because what I've found, and I grew up largely in a spiritual community, although of course, I was at school and started working and so on, but yet still I was surrounded by people who are on the spiritual journey. And some of them tremendous fountains of love, real examples of what it means to be a loving human being. And so those influences and those memories are, very deep in me. And what I have found is that as is my relationship with myself, so will be the way I relate to others and the way also other people relate to me. And so I think this is really the starting point, how I see myself, my levels of self-acceptance, how much do I embrace myself, and how much do I allow myself to grow even through my own weaknesses. So let me just knock the ball back over the net to you there, Nev, and see your thoughts on that.
That's very beautiful, Yog. And you've gone right to the heart of the matter, I think. It's definitely my experience that that when there is that lack of self-appreciation, you could call it, there's an insecurity there. And that insecurity is liable to make you either behave arrogantly with others or weakly with others. You know, you either push others around or get pushed around. You're either a perpetrator or a victim. You might, it might not be as extreme as that, but you'll be somewhere along that spectrum, and maybe sometimes a perpetrator and sometimes a victim. But instead of the beauty of human relationships, of give and take in a really clean and joyful way, those negative connotations come in, where you might feel a need to put others down, or you may feel that you don't have the strength to stand up to bullying behavior by others. Mm-hmm. And these things get in the way of our ability to love, unquestionably. And I agree with you that lack of self-respect does lie at the root of those dysfunctional behaviors with one another. But the question that that I'd like to pose, although I feel as if I've learned a lot about the answer, thanks to many decades of experiencing the example of the kind of people you spoke of. I wasn't exposed to this wisdom at the same age as you. I had a career and a family well underway when I started it, towards the end of my 30s. But I was definitely feeling at that time a sense of growing sense of emptiness because of not having that self-respect and not knowing how to find it. I was looking for it in the wrong place, I would say. I was looking for it through trying to work very hard, trying to prove myself with the newspapers, trying to be, better than the Joneses, in terms of material goods and all of that, the yuppie lifestyle. And of course, that can support you for a while, but it will end up being a cul-de-sac, because if you're comparing things, if your self-respect in a sense is coming from the way you're defining yourself in relation to others, then you'll never be satisfied. It doesn't matter how successful you are. You might have had a great life even of achievement, but you will probably, as old age approaches and the achievements are no longer possible, you would still feel dissatisfied. It's quite possible that you would, unless your achievements had come from a place of strength rather than that neediness. Mm-hmm. And that's the big difference that I've seen gradually in myself, from a position of needing respect from readers, from family, and so forth, to having that self-respect in a real way, so that I'm able to be more giving in my relations with others. I've definitely seen that shift, and I'm massively appreciative of that. And as you indicated, it's very connected to your sense of who you are. If you're defining yourself through those material measurements of your possessions and the people that you're with and your position in the world and so forth, then they're here today and gone tomorrow. There will always be insecurity. I feel so sorry for when I see many politicians. It's said that most political careers end in tragedy and failure, because there's that fun of climbing the ladder, but eventually you're chucked out, even when you've been as successful as Margaret Thatcher was in the eyes of many. Still, eventually, after something like 10 years in Downing Street, as one of her lieutenants said, the windows of number 10 get smaller and smaller the longer you're living in there. And she was losing more and more contact with herself and the world, and her life did not have a happy ending. Whereas if we can shift from defining ourselves and looking for love and even trying to give love with that negative motivation in mind, that we're trying to give love in order to get love back, if we can move from that to sort of charging the battery of our well-being and our inner security in a way that is independent of those externals, or at least becomes more and more independent of those things outside of you, is much better for you, and it's much better for those that you live with. This is my experience. But as you indicated, it is to do with a different awareness. It's subtle rather than material. And maybe you could say a bit more about that, where that subtlety can take you.
Yeah, I think another word for love, if you could find another word for love, is, for me, the word is respect. I think love and respect are really two sides of the same coin. And connected to what you were saying, I'm remembering an important moment in my own life when I was around 15 years old. It was the first time that I went to our spiritual headquarters in Mount Abu in Rajasthan, India. And anyway, when you're a teenager, then two things are going on for you. One is you're looking for identity, and the other is you're trying to prove yourself in some way. And so these kinds of energies are pulsating through you, especially, at school and so on. But the first time I was in that spiritual environment in our global spiritual headquarters, I really felt this genuine sense of love and respect for me, not just as this 15-year-old guy who's come from London, but really seeing me as a spiritual being, as a spiritual energy, or as a soul. And it was real. It was genuine.
You mean others were seeing you that way,
Yeah.
or you were seeing yourself?
No,
it was the way others looked at you.
Yeah, they were seeing me like this. And it wasn't as though they were being nice to me or polite to me or trying to make me feel comfortable, but it was genuine. It was real. And I just felt, gosh, I like this. I like these people. And I think this is the way I should be as well. A genuine love. And it was, every day, love and respect. So one of the conclusions I came to is that the whole of life and the way that I relate to life is connected to what I choose to see in another person or in a situation. I think that's really at the heart of the matter. And this is another way of saying it's all about identity. Yeah. I think all issues in the world, all problems in the world, are basically identity-based problems. And if we want to improve ourselves, increase our capacity to love, it starts with understanding my personal identity. And if I see myself as a spiritual energy or as a soul, and we consider that to be the living being in the forehead, then the question which comes next is, when I see another person, what do I see first? Do I just see what we call as the worldly identity, the race of the body, the sex of the body, the age of the body, maybe the religion that person is born into, or the profession? And when we see that, then I think our love, the quality of our love reduces, and it gets filled with selfishness and with expectations. And I think that's what some have described as emotional love. And it's the kind of love which gives you a high when people are behaving as you wish them to behave, and an emotional low when they behave as they wish to behave. And that's the love, I think, which is very tiring for people. And they find that it's something that they want to get away from and experience real love. Now, real love, I would describe also as love which is selfless. And then the question arises, well, how can we love in a selfless way? I think it starts with this, to being aware of myself as a spiritual being. And when I see another, no matter who that person may be, let me first see the other also as a spiritual energy, a spiritual being, as a soul. And what I find happens through that is then I am able to go beyond my own prejudices, my own biases, which I may be carrying from the past. And my vision can cut through the layers of age, nationality, caste, all of those things, and really see the other as a soul. And then love, a genuine love and respect is generated for the other. And I'd say also the measure of how real the love is when some person is behaving in a way that I don't particularly like. Am I still able to generate genuine feelings of kindness, respect, acceptance for the other, or does my love reduce? And I think there is the important thing, that do I choose to focus upon what I don't like about someone when they're displaying those behaviors, or is my vision able still to fall upon their strengths and appreciate them, appreciate their goodness? Let me add one or two more things here, Nev. A great analogy from nature, which keeps inspiring me year after year, is of the power of the sun. Now, the sun it's just being itself. It's sharing its light and its heat. And if one particular day we were to block out the sun by closing the curtains and ignore the sun, it doesn't really bother the sun. The sun doesn't get upset. The next day, it's still going to shine on you. It's not going to say, well, you people blocked me out yesterday, so today I'm not shining on you. And I think that's how we are when our love is real, when our love is spiritual, that you just express that loving attitude, that kind attitude, because that's who you are. Not because someone is behaving in a nice way to you, or because you may, want certain favors from others. And I think that's the kind of spiritual love that is needed in the world today, to make our own hearts full and to make our relationships stable, and ones in which we're able really to offer the best of ourselves towards each other. A short sentence I'll just end with here, which I heard from a friend of mine once when I was in Greece. Very tiny sentence, but very meaningful. He said to me once, "Don't love, be love." I thought, yeah, that's really good. Don't love, be love. And for me, that's what makes the love real.
That's beautiful, Yogesh. Yeah. I can relate to a lot of what you're saying. I've especially become aware that what I feed myself with, the kind of vision that I allow into myself, the way I see people and events, has a big effect on either maintaining the sort of walls that had, or sort of almost like a shell that had grown around my love, sort of where the heart was damaged by previous experiences, and certain ways of living strengthen those walls, and certain ways of living bring them down. And I absolutely have seen from very direct experience that when you have a critical outlook, it's actually coming from that insecurity, because you're trying to boost your own self-respect by putting down others with your vision. And it doesn't help at all. It actually adds to your own lack of self-respect. And that does that in a number of ways. One is that when you're being judgmental towards others, you can feel, if you think, even just think now of somebody who makes you feel, crabby about them because of their behavior, you can immediately feel you don't feel happy. It's a negative feeling. So that's one of the first impacts, that you're reinforcing a sense of loss in yourself. And also, because your vision towards them is negative, they are liable to, you're liable to bring out the worst in them. They will see you in the same way, quite likely, because, according to your thoughts and feelings, so your words are likely to be towards them, or at least your body language. And so you won't make friends easily, and then you'll become, more isolated, and there's a kind of vicious circle at work. And thirdly, when you're projecting your own dissatisfaction outwards like that by dwelling on other people's weaknesses, then it actually obscures your ability to see that the weakness is in you. And so you're stuck in the same groove, you can't shift it. And I think that's a plight that many of us are in. I feel as if have been pulled out of it, and I'm working to become free of such tendencies, but I'm aware of them, and I think they're very widespread. If you look at the media, it's constantly either putting people on a pedestal or pulling them down. And if it has put them on a pedestal, then the game seems to be sooner or later to pull them down. And this is reflecting widespread human behavior at this time. And my experience is that just hearing that I need to be more loving, or I need to see other people's virtues, or I need to sort of focus more on positive thoughts, it doesn't really have all that much impact in itself. It has to go with a shift of understanding. And you touched on one aspect of that when you said about how when you went to that headquarters of the Spiritual University in India as a young man, as a teenager, you experienced that you were seen as a spiritual being, that people were seeing past the body, the race, the age, the gender. They were seeing something deeper than that, and there was love within that vision. So that, I think, you were very privileged to have experienced that, especially at that young age. And maybe that's one reason why you're so perfect. So, as I said in my introduction, because you really are very good. But something that clicked for me, because even that soul awareness, as we call it, that sort of sense of the deeper inner being, it actually can take a lot to establish it. It because of these barriers that we put around ourselves. It's like when you're hurt, you might go into a sulk, and no matter how much someone tries to comfort you, you don't want to know. And it's as if many of us, perhaps through accumulated hurts associated with, I do understand that all the hurts that come to us in some way or another, there are reasons for them, but maybe that accumulation has become such that these walls won't come down without some external factor, like you experienced it with those powerful yogis on Mount Abu. My experience was when I met people who were practicing these things, when I first met them in London, I did feel that they had a quality to them that was missing in me. It's that positivity. You called it respect. We called it love as a general term, but it was to do with that they were learning how to charge the battery of their own welfare, their own self-respect, and so they were able to be more giving than usual in their relations with others. And I felt that, and it was an inspiration, and it put me on the path. But I have to say that the real click for me of actually really sort of finally feeling as if my intellect had opened to these deeper realities it came when I sort of felt as if there was like an inner voice, which was not mine, that came to me at one point. And it said something like, with me, you can fulfill your longing to love. And this came after, it was after a few days of at a retreat. And it was like my mind had opened enough for a message like that to reach me. And that was hugely meaningful for me, because it kind of showed me that there is an entity that is bigger than me, that is pure, that is loving. And that if I remember that one, which I do precious little of the day, but it doesn't take all that much of remembering that one to feel as if you're really charging the battery well. When I do that, it gives me the strength to overcome those insecurities and to live with people with more of that real love. So I don't know whether that is as meaningful for you, because the way you described the way you live your life, it's as if that soul quality, which I do believe is our deepest reality in each one of us, that loving spiritual inner being. And I see you as living with that in a very consistent way. But can you say something from your experience about this sense that yoga, after all, it means union or connection with something deeper and higher and different from one's own self? And I've found that it was when that sense of relationship, the possibility, the experience, but then to be invoking that again and again, the sense that very pure, powerful companion is actually only a thought away, but you have to sort of choose some positive approaches in your own mind in order to make the connection, rather like tuning into a particular radio station. You can't get it if you're on the wrong wavelength. So what's your experience been on that side? Because it's been very important for me in really getting to feel what real love can be like, really pure love.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this connection or relationship with God, I would like to use the word God or the divine, building a relationship with that higher being or that ocean of love, as we sometimes call that being, I think that's absolutely central to allowing me to become whole again, for every part of me to come together. And I believe that in the relationship with that divine being, the ocean of love, I feel I learn how to love others. Because, we may call God as a great teacher or a great friend or a guide or a companion. But also in that relationship, I become stronger. I become balanced, or I like to use the word, I become reformatted. Every part of me just falls into the right place. And it's because the love of the divine being is also filled with strength, power, energy. Now, the kind of worldly love or emotional love that we have today mostly has hidden agendas.
It's very often it's neediness, isn't it?
Yeah. And there are expectations hidden in there, and even hidden from our own selves. And we don't realize we have expectations of someone until those expectations are not met. Then when the feeling of disappointment comes, then you realize, I had an expectation of this person. And as one of our great yogi friends often says, expectations are an invitation to irritation. Yeah. And so I find this, building a genuine, authentic relationship with the divine being gives you the strength to be able to make your love real. If my personal needs are being met in my relationship with the divine being, then I'm in a position of strength to be able to offer the best of myself to others. And those hidden needs I have will be met in that relationship. But, I use the word relationship because it takes time to build that relationship up. But it's for no small reason that poets and writers have, written about this great relationship between soul and supreme soul and how fulfilling it is. It brings you to the very fullness of who you can be as a human being. And that's what I've seen in these senior yogis, and you know them as well. And they have the senior dadis, we call them. These amazing women who are so filled with God's love that they are able to share that love with thousands around them. And one of the signs of that pure love I found was that when you are in the presence of pure love, your ego melts. And so I would find that if I was near one of these great dadis, whoever would come to meet them would become like a child. Their ego would melt, even though there may be, someone with a lot of accomplishment in the world. And it's rather like when you go in front of a baby, or a very young child, you become like a baby. You start making silly faces and gurgling noises. And why? It's because it's the purity of the child is touching the purity in you. And you want to be like that. You start behaving like a baby yourself. Yeah,
you're making me behave like a baby, and I must just I'm going to take this chance to share with you all. I mean, it's a real groaner Christmas joke, but what lies in a pram and wobbles? A jelly baby. I love that. But yes, no, I mean, seriously, you're right. That fullness it's freedom too, isn't it? The baby, of course, it has its needs. It cries if it's hungry or cold, or it needs a cuddle or something. But basically, it's exploring the world without expectations. It's just loving. And you look at a little baby, and I see a lot of them. I've been living on the coast, on the south coast in the last couple of years. And there's a lot of parents with young children, bring them to see the sea and to walk along the prom. And they're wonderful, these small children. They're full of joy. They naturally skip. They're naturally curious. And they just love exploring life. It's such a pleasure to see the freedom of the spirit, learning how to use this chariot, as we call it in spiritual speak, the body. It's a wonderful thing. And the daddies did have that quality, but in a very powerful way. Somehow, because of there wasn't innocence, they were very aware. A baby is innocent. And so I think that's one of our problems, that when we come, we might have that innocence and love and joy in life, but then, life can throw some hard stones at you. And then that's when these barriers start to go up. And then, to have the courage to let them come down, you need a lot of confidence before you will actually take those barriers down and say, yes, okay, I think I can afford to be more real about who I am in a loving way. And I'm interested in how you overcome, when you're teaching, some of the barriers that people have against this idea of a supreme being, because I certainly did. I grew up, I went to a local Anglican church, quite nice, sort of decent people, trying in general, cucumber sandwiches and bring and buy sales and things like that. It was a social activity, but there wasn't really much spirituality. And I saw quite a bit of hypocrisy, you know, people speaking of loving your neighbor, but actually being anything but loving. And so that was one experience. And also just knowing about how through history, people have said, I'm beating this child in the name of God, or I'm killing this nation, or these members of this other atheistic religion in the name of God. All these terrible things been done in the name of God. And so many people have got a big resistance, not surprisingly, to this very idea that there is some other dimension that could really be truly loving, because the idea of God has led humans astray in many ways.
Yeah.
How do you overcome that? Because you teach a lot, and you're living in a country where, you know, there's mixed religions, I guess. It's mainly Islamic, living in Turkey. When you're talking to people on this, I mean, I think perhaps there's a bit more of a sense of the non-physical in Islam. You know, that Islam does treasure the idea that there is a source that is non-physical. That's strong in it, isn't it? But you know, what's your experience of this? Because I do feel this is a huge obstacle to people opening their hearts to this wonderful divine energy that creates that fullness that we're speaking of.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think God has been given a bad press, and the connotations, the ideas about what God is, what God does, have maybe to some degree distanced humanity from experiencing this friendship and partnership with the divine being. I find before one can experience a sense of connectedness to this divine source, first the journey inward is necessary. Now, you'd mentioned yoga is about connection, but that's the second step. First step is the journey inward. Then the second is the journey upward. And so what I find is important is not just to speak of these things, but to be them, to experience them and to live them. And I think that's what helps people's hearts to open. People need examples that if you are a spiritual person, if you do live in some kind of partnership or friendship with God, what kind of person are you? What kind of person has it made you? Are you kind? Are you considerate? Are you compassionate? And so I think that being it before saying it is important for trust to be built. Because, as you say, ideas of God have been misused for power and abuse and control and domination. So I believe we need to be models. And I try to pay attention to that and just share ideas from my own life experience, how it is that my connection with the divine source has helped me to grow personally. And then I would just encourage everyone to experiment in their own lives. And one of the things to try, if it's new for everyone, is, you know, to just have some morning time, having just a gentle conversation with the great friend, and, you know, the great friend, the great companion, in a very natural and easy way. And I do believe that the morning time is very, very special for experiencing a sense of connectedness with the divine source. And then a relationship builds gradually. I mean, all relationships take time to grow, but they have to start somewhere. And so I find this is what helps me in terms of sharing or introducing the idea of a divine being. Let me just add one more thing, which I wanted to say a bit earlier, which is, I think, a very important phrase when it comes to understanding real love. And in the Hindi language, these two words go together. That's why I'm going to say them. The word is nyara and pyara. It said this is like a combination of two words. Pyara means to be loving.
you've faded out slightly as you said that. There was certainly on my mic, it might have been everybody. Could you just say it again?
Yeah. In Hindi, it is nyara and pyara. These two must go together. So nyara means to be detached, and pyara means to be loving. So if I want my love to be real and strong and pure and authentic, it must contain detachment. And what tends to happen is, if you think of like a seesaw, if the detachment and the love are in equal amounts, it keeps the love real, genuine, and spiritual. But when there's too much emphasis on the love part and the detachment is missing, then the love changes into possession. And then it changes into controlling, and then making demands, and then judgmentalism and dependency, attachment, and so on. And then what started off as an emotional high has now become an emotional low. As much as I was maybe loving someone, that much I dislike or hate that person. And that's emotional love. It goes through these ups and downs because the detachment is missing. Now, of course, if we go too much on the detachment side, then we become a bit cold, aloof, distant, uncaring. So sometimes people, the swing between these two extremes. But I find that this is the main formula for balance and success and harmony in human relationships, maintaining the detached and loving formula. And it's a lifelong project. It takes years to work on, but it's so empowering and so freeing once you begin to get this balance right in all your relationships. Just one more thing I like to show with my hands is a healthy distance between any two people. Now, in some parts of the world, people are like this, quite far from each other, which is maybe not so good. In other parts of the world, maybe where I live and the Eastern world generally, people tend to be like this. So this is not so good, but also this is not so good. And I believe the correct way to be with others is like this. I call this as spiritual distancing. We've had lots of social distancing. Spiritual. And if you're like this, if you're stuck to someone, then if that person has a bad day, goes a bit crazy one day, it really affects you as well. You get shaken up. But if you're like this, and that person goes a bit crazy one day or is in a bad mood, you are still stable. And your stability actually will help the other one to stabilize. And I think this is what makes the love real. The capacity to love is still there, even when the other is, quote unquote, misbehaving in some way, having a bad day, not living up to the standards that they can live up to. But your capacity to respect, to be kind, to allow somebody space without making them feel judged is still high. And one thing I have experienced, and I know you have as well, Nev, with these great yogis, is let's say this is my usual standard of behavior, and on a particular day I may be lower than I know I could be, but the vision of these yogis, these dadis, still sees me in my highest potential. Doesn't look down on me and make me feel like, you're so low today, you're wasting time today, or you've fallen from, your standard. But keeping the vision of me high, elevated, respectful, which allows me to come back to my position of self-respect. So I think that detachment allows you to own your ability to love. And then your love is an action rather than a reaction to the behavior of others. I think that's what makes it real. It's coming from you rather than it's a reaction to something or someone outside of you?
I'm with you on that, and I very much resonate with your description of the need to have detachment and love in equal measure. I love, there's a picture from Hinduism of what it said to be the emperor and empress of the golden age, or like paradise, where in the concept of a wheel of time, at the beginning of this, humans are in a state of perfection. And the picture shows this emperor and empress, who are known as Lakshmi and Narayan, standing with, just like this, with total self-containment, and yet they're partners. And I love that image. I've seen an evolution in my own close relationships, which is towards that. We're not achieved that, but towards that, without a doubt. Where at one time, when my understanding of love was more like, you know, an entanglement with another, wanting to become one with them, kind of thing. And I really don't think that works at the human level. I used to feel that was an ideal relationship, if I could lose myself in another. And perhaps it was just as well for me that my partner didn't feel the same way, because she was more independent. But this became a source of friction. And over time, as I filled myself with more strength through this yoga practice, the kind of ways of using my mind and thoughts and feelings that we've been speaking of, I found that the relationship has changed radically. And when I am now, I was away with my partner for about a week recently, and we had a wonderful week together, where we just no longer feel, well, I used to feel that dependency, and I think from my partner's side, it was more like a certain irritation with the dependency that I showed. Whereas now, it's much more like mutual respect. And that is quite an achievement in very practical life. And I think, you know, with family and grandchildren, and they all have seen this evolution, and they're all somewhat, I think, rather admiring of it. It's unusual. They see many couples, you know, they may have stayed together for a lifetime, but because of this entanglement, they irritate one another enormously. And sometimes, of course, many marriages break up because of this irritation. So, yeah, you know, I feel as if this procedure we're talking about of becoming more full and complete with these spiritual methods is really so much needed in today's world. I'd like to say a little bit more on that aspect of attachment. There's something in the idea of locking into a task that sometimes, if the motivation is really pure, it can achieve wonders. And I heard there were two of the senior sisters of the movement that we both studied with all these years, the Brahma Kumari Spiritual University. Two of the senior sisters were discussing one day whether in any circumstances attachment was permissible. You know, that's where you get closer than just, you know, the two separate but close and respectful, but you actually sort of, one of them was saying, no, it's never permissible. But the other one, who I think is actually probably a speciality of hers, she died a year or two back at the age of 104, but the speciality of hers was that she was ready to actually engage with people in a very, very tight way to try to help pull them out of what she might say was the quicksand of wrong consciousness. And, you know, I've had many times where she would speak to me what might sound like harsh harshness to an onlooker, but it was because she wasn't looking for any approval from me that she was able to speak to me in that straight way. And I admire that very much. I think it was a speciality in her that was particularly valuable for me. And it takes courage, and it's something that I don't naturally have that ability myself. I would say that I'm more on the side of wanting to keep the peace, not journalistically, I can write all sorts of things, but I don't mind being challenged. But when it comes to personal one-on-one relationships, I don't like conflict, and I will tend to back away from it. But there are times when you're called upon to really face the reality of a situation and speak about it. And that is something that I feel this particular Daddy Janky was her name, was really good at. She had great courage. And I think I've found myself better able to be more upfront in speaking about my feelings. And feelings may not be particularly praiseworthy. It might be that I'm upset about something, or I am seeing that something is wrong in a particular situation. But if you don't have that power inside where your love is real, as we're saying, and instead you'll be afraid that if you say something, you might lose the other person's love and respect. But if you've got that love and respect in that self-respect, as you spoke of it at the outset, then you become better able to speak your mind to the other, because you know that, or at least you've more confidence that what you're saying is for the best, rather than because of your own ego or your own neediness. So that was just a little extra that I wanted to throw in there. I found that I've seen that change coming in myself too, to some degree.
Yeah, you mentioned Daddy Jankin. I think she had this ability, which I think is an act of love, to almost like to enter your soul.
Yeah.
And, to push a few buttons and turn a few levers and do some repair work and gently withdraw without interfering with who you are. And an act of love is really to help someone in such a way they don't even realize they have been helped. And you sort of softly disappear because you want that person to be the best of who they can be, without looking for thanks, appreciation, or glory. I think to help someone like that, you have to be spiritually very strong, very secure. And that's what makes you a real person, I feel.
So Carolyn has softly appeared. And I think she probably are there a few questions that have come up?
Yes, there are a few questions have come in. There's a political one, but we'll come back to that one if we have time. But how do we check if we are being love in the moment? Who would like to take that?
Is that for Uncle Nev?
I think, well, perhaps you should start with that one, because you said to be love rather, what was the expression? You have to be love before you speak of it.
Yeah, don't love, be love.
Pardon?
The phrase was don't love, be love.
That was it. Don't love, be love. Yeah.
Yeah. So the question is, how do you know you are being love in the moment? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a work in progress. Often you can't measure where you're at until later, until you see how the relationship or the interaction pans out. But one thing just to check is this, that regardless of how the other person may be responding or not responding, am I still stable? Is my peace of mind and my happiness in my own hands? Do I still own my capacity to love and to generate good feelings, good wishes? So if somebody is not responding or behaving in the opposite way to me, does it dampen or reduce my capacity to love? So I think others can be a mirror by which I can see where I am at in my journey towards having real love.
I would agree with that completely. And I think it's one of the reasons why it's so important to be active in relationships with family, friends, community, whatever it may be, because of that mirroring effect. If you might think that you were doing very well, you know, as a great loving yogi, if you were living in a cave away from everybody else, but you know, then I don't know, something could happen that threw you right off your perch. But if you're constantly being tested through relationships, not to have excessive expectations of yourself, because obviously, you know, to actually achieve that state of absolute real love, real stable love, would be godlike, and we can move towards that, but we're not going to achieve it in right now, I don't think. But we can move towards it, and the extent to which we keep clearing the obstacles to it, as we look, well, why did I react there? Or I felt bad about the outcome there. What was I looking for that made me less than loving? You know, that kind of mirroring is really, really helpful in moving forward. But you have to do it with a lot of self-respect at the same time, because otherwise you'll be dispirited and you'll hide from the reality. You won't want to look in the mirror. You'll just get back in the old habit of blaming everybody else. And that doesn't help anybody.
That leads really nicely on to the next question. How to be detached while living in the family to be more loving? What is the most important factor of keeping love alive in a relationship? Is self-sacrificing a true love?
I think Nev may be better suited to answer that as a family man.
The just to take that self-sacrifice aspect first, that gets interpreted in different ways. You know, sometimes people sacrifice themselves in ways that are like, they think that they're giving themselves to God, but they're actually weakening themselves and making themselves useless, increasingly useless in their relationships. So self-sacrifice doesn't mean putting yourself down. It means strengthening yourself, actually. But true self-sacrifice is where you're seeing where your limited self, your insecure, egotistical tendencies are getting in the way of your love, and you're addressing those to gradually remove those. That is true self-sacrifice. That is actually sacrificing the limited self to reveal the full beauty of the true self. So just to clear that one up first, but in the family, I was really quite slow to bring these things through in a complete way. In fact, it's taken me decades for the penny to even begin to drop that I really am a spiritual being. I'm not this lump of matter, this miracle of matter. But when this body dies, I don't finish. I'm immortal. I'm consciousness. I'm a soul, and there's a whole kind of body of understanding that I've taken on board now that goes with that. But ultimately, it's very simple: that there is a supreme consciousness, that we're all come from that. That supreme consciousness has a great purity to it, which means that it never loses its love and its positivity and its wisdom, and that in a sense is our birthright. It's just that in the course of possibly many lifetimes, again, something that not everyone's experienced or been familiar with, but that idea that we've been on a long journey and we've gradually picked up burdens that now have to be shed, that is also very valuable. So that one understands and forgives oneself for one's failings. But in the family, what I found very challenging in the early days was that I was suddenly in love with a quite different way of seeing things, and I really wanted to pursue it. And my family I was very fortunate, actually, to the extent that they sort of came along with it, but they didn't love it in the same way that I did. And so that provided something of a conflict, I would say, in the earlier years, because I wasn't living it. It's like Yogesh was saying, you have to be love. You have to be it rather than talk about it. And that growth in my being it has fortunately, it has nourished the family, I would say, over the years, as we've maintained all of our connections and relationships. And it was as it became more authentic in me that the others were genuinely helped by it, rather than in the early days, I feel as if my embracing of a whole different way of seeing things actually created some friction in the home. It was really quite difficult at times. But the good thing was that there was a lot of humor about Nev and his spiritual passion. I was the object of a lot of humor within the family, and that was very, very healthy. And in fact, my son, one of our sons, wrote a book a few years back about his experiences of when his dad went spiritual. It was called The House is Full of Yogis. It was, when I read this, honestly, I cried with laughter on just about every page. It was hilarious, very kindly, but also extremely funny, because sometimes, when you've got a new love, but you haven't really understood it properly, you're not living it, you've realized that there's something marvelous that you want, but it's kind of elusive because of all the other stuff that's in the way. So sometimes there's some upheaval along the way, and it's really important to be forgiving of yourself and accepting of others, and keep smiling through it. And my experience is that in time it becomes something absolutely wonderful that brings much better relationships than normal.
Thank you. We've probably got time just for one more. And this one says, would you please explain where commitment sits in the relationship?
That's probably something that I should say a word on too. I think I had a kind of, I would say, a conventional understanding of commitment. A part of my sort of upbringing that made me feel very sad when the relationship wasn't working so well because of my love that wasn't shared by my partner. And I think that sadness was an obstacle to me, actually. It slowed the pace at which I was able to commit myself to this and get on that wavelength that takes the power from God, that then allows the relationship to be put on its feet in a better way. So I think normal, conventional morals, to some degree, sometimes for the sake of deep truth, for the sake of real love, you sometimes have to put on one side commitment in a worldly sense, in order, in the longer run, to be able to truly love those to whom you have that responsibility of a partnership or children or the rest. I don't know if that's been within your experience, Yo, but that is definitely my experience, that there are times when just feeling as if, I'm a failure, that because, of the strains that have arisen in my relationships, and I'm just so happy that something held me long enough to really feel as if that true self-respect and true relationship with the divine was growing in me, to the point that everything has come full circle in a most beautiful way. But there was some rocky ride along the way.
Yogesh, earlier you said that a test of true love is when the other person does something that you don't really like or you don't approve of. Do you think like and love are the same thing, or are they can they be totally separate?
I think you can not like something about someone, but you can still love the soul. So, for example, you may not like the way someone speaks or the way they do something, or certain choices they have, or certain opinions.
Certain jokes.
Jokes. but to love means, your vision goes above and beyond just the personality, and you see the soul who is behind that. And so in that sense, to love is a long-term experience. Liking and disliking can be in the short term, up and down, up and down.
Very nice. Mm.
Yeah. So I know we're coming to an end, but I did want to say, Nev did say some very nice things about me at the beginning. And I just wanted to say, and I know he knows what I'm going to say, that the last time we were together in a conversation like this, I think was about 25 years ago in Oxford. And somebody described me as the Indian Neville. And it's an accolade I've never forgotten. So,
I would be really happy if they called me the English Yogesh.
Well, that's lovely. And I can see both sides of it. I'm sorry that we have some more questions, but we haven't got time for all of those. Yogesh, do you think you could lead us in a meditation, please?
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, so for those who may be new to this, if you can just have your back straight, your feet flat on the floor if comfortable for you. And I'll speak out a simple guiding commentary and just follow as best as you can. You may have your eyes half open or fully closed, or even fully open if you like. And I'll also play a little bit of music, which can just help concentration. So let's just take a few moments just to be with myself. The world outside of me is the world of sound, of movement, the world of action, the world of doing. But there is also a world inside me. And that is the world of my thoughts, my feelings, my experiences. And the world inside me is in my own hands. I can choose the thoughts I wish to create. And so I create the thought of peace. I become aware of my inner peace. I become aware I am not what I do. I am not what I have. I am. I I am the spiritual energy which drives this physical body. I am the inner being of peaceful light in the center of the forehead. I, the living soul, I am light. I am eternal. I am peace. I am love. I am joy. Let me stay in this awareness of this, my true and my deepest identity. I am light. I am eternal. I am free. Now gently, I return to the awareness of this moment.
Thank you, Yogesh. That was lovely. And thank you both for a lovely session. For any of those questions we didn't get to, I do apologise, but there were so many and we ran out of time. There has been a question about titles of your books, Nev, and also I know that there are meditation commentaries by you, Yogesh. If you go to inspiredstillness.com, you'll be able to find them, because I'm sure we all would like some more of those lovely meditations. But thank you both. There's lots of thanks and lovely comments coming into the chat. It's been a very rewarding session, and it's taking love to a different place than most people think of it in today's world. I hope we don't have to wait another 23 or 25 years for you two to have a conversation again. I'm sure everyone's enjoyed it and we'd like to do it again before too long. So thank you both, and thank you everybody for being here. Next week's session is called Creating a Sacred Space with Sister Mira from Malaysia. I hope you can all join us again then. And thank you again, Neville and Yogesh. It's been a delight.
Thanks. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Very much to everyone.